This thing has 2 floors. 2. A motorhome, on the road, with a complete second level of living space stacked directly on top of the first. And before you say anything, yes, I know what you're thinking. That's a bus. No, it is not a bus. Stay with me. This is the TerraLuxe, an AI-generated concept design. No factory, no production line, no delivery date. Pure imagination. And honestly, that is exactly what makes it worth your time. When there are no real-world constraints, no accountants, no engineers saying, we can't do that. What does the ultimate motorhome actually look like? Apparently, it looks like this. 6 wheels. Full double-deck body. A face that looks like it was designed to make traditional motorhomes feel embarrassed about themselves. Here's what we are doing today. We are walking the exterior, because there is a design decision on the rear of this vehicle I genuinely have not seen before, and I am saving it. Then we are deconstructing the interior across both floors. Then powertrain. Then my honest verdict, including the one thing I would change. Let's go. The front face. Look at the front of this vehicle and tell me that is not a statement. That grille, wide, structured, horizontally ribbed, sits behind a badge that looks like it was drawn by someone who deeply respects both Tesla and Rolls-Royce and refused to choose between them. The LED signature lighting runs in sharp horizontal lines across the full width of the fascia. Not loops, not curves, lines. Deliberate, confident, architectural. What is the face communicating? Power with control. This is not a vehicle that announces itself aggressively. It announces itself quietly, which is a much harder thing to design. You have to earn quiet confidence. This front face earns it. The windshield angle is steep, probably 25 to 30 degrees of rake, and it wraps wide enough to give the driver something approaching panoramic forward vision. Think about what that means for the person behind the wheel. Driving something this large, with that kind of glass ahead of you, feels fundamentally different from the narrow, upright windshields on conventional coaches. You feel like you are piloting something, not just driving it. Side profile. Step back and look at the profile. This is where the double-deck concept either succeeds or fails, and this one succeeds, for one specific reason. The proportions are disciplined. A lot of double-deck RV concepts go wrong here because they stack the second floor as an obvious afterthought. You can see the seam. You can see where the first design ended and the panicked second level began. The TerraLuxe does not do that. The roofline is continuous. The glass wraps both levels with consistent framing. The body panels on the lower half use a deliberate contrast between the silver structural sections and the darker glass zones, so your eye reads the vehicle as one resolved shape, not 2 boxes. The glass-to-body ratio on this thing is extraordinary. Look at the upper level. It is almost entirely glazed on the front 3/4. That is not accidental. That upper deck is clearly designed to be a living space where you feel you are inside the landscape, not just looking at it through a porthole. Aerodynamic shaping. Now let's talk about the roofline specifically, because this is where the designer made a choice that separates concept thinking from fantasy thinking. The roof has a structured rear spoiler section. You can see the lip at the trailing edge. On something this large and blunt-fronted, aerodynamic management matters enormously. Every point of drag coefficient you reduce on a vehicle this size and weight directly extends range. On a full electric platform, which we will get to, this is not decoration. This is engineering logic rendered in visual form. The flat roof panel also creates the perfect platform for solar integration. We will talk about that in the text section, but the geometry here serves a dual purpose: aerodynamics and solar yield. That is the kind of design thinking that actually translates to real-world value. Paint and surface finish. The finish on this concept is what I would describe as stealth silver. Not chrome, not matte, not high gloss. It sits somewhere between brushed aluminum and the finish you see on modern commercial aircraft. Light plays across it differently at different angles. In the render, you can see how the overhead studio lighting creates a gradient across the body panels that makes the surface feel almost three-dimensional. This finish communicates one thing specifically: quiet seriousness. This is not a vehicle trying to be noticed. It is a vehicle that will be noticed regardless. Wheels and stance. 6 wheels. Triaxle configuration. And the wheel choice is important here. These are not the glossy chrome rims of a casino bus or a standard coach. These are dark, structured, multi-spoke wheels with aggressive all-terrain tires. The sidewall height is substantial. That combination tells you exactly what this concept is imagining as its use case. Not the motorway to a campsite, but the unmade track beyond it. The off-grid territory where most luxury motorhomes simply cannot go. The stance that creates 6 contact points, wide track, tall sidewalls, gives this vehicle a planted, purposeful presence from the rear that I want to talk about now. Because here is the detail I mentioned at the top. The rear of this vehicle has a full-width light bar, not a thin accent, but a structural rear light element that mirrors the width of the front face and wraps slightly around the lower rear corners with a red perimeter glow. It is the visual equivalent of a period at the end of a sentence. It closes the design. It says, "This vehicle is complete." Most motorhome concepts forget the rear entirely. This one didn't. And that, for me, is the mark of a designer who actually thought this through from every angle, including the one most people see last. Now I need to take you inside. Because if the exterior is this resolved, what the interior proportions tell us is going to be very interesting. The detective work. Here is how I approach the interior when we do not have full renders. You use the exterior as evidence. Every proportion, every design decision on the outside tells you something about what the designer intended inside. So let us do this properly. Ceiling height. Start with the wheels. Those tires look to be approximately 35 to 37 inches in diameter, comparable to serious expedition-grade truck tires. Use that as your scale reference against the overall body height. This concept appears to sit at roughly 13 to 14 feet total height. Standard motorhome ceiling height is around 6.5 feet on a single level. With a double-deck body, divided even approximately, you are looking at something approaching 6 to 6.5 feet per level, with the structural floor/ceiling between them accounting for the remaining height. What that means for you: you can stand up on both floors. That sounds obvious, but it is not. Most double-deck RV concepts that have actually been built compromise one level, usually the upper, into a sleeping loft you have to crouch into. The TerraLuxe appears to refuse that compromise. Both levels look designed for upright human habitation. Zone layout, lower level. Based on the entry steps visible midship on the driver's side, the main entry point divides the lower deck into a forward zone and a rear zone. Standard design logic would place the cockpit forward, transitioning immediately into a lounge or dining zone, with kitchen and wet facilities aft. The lower level glass, those long, horizontal windows, suggest the lounge area occupies the longest continuous glazed section of the lower deck. Imagine sitting at a table in that zone. Eye level with the landscape. Horizontal views across the full width. Morning coffee with a mountain range filling the window frame. The kitchen, based on where the rear body panel storage bays are located, almost certainly runs across the rear lower section. The exterior storage bay positioning tells you where the plumbing infrastructure is routed: water tanks, gray water management, waste systems. Everything clusters here. It is the least glamorous part of the floor plan, but it is the part that makes everything else possible. Zone layout, upper level. The upper deck is where this concept does something I genuinely think is underappreciated. That front glass, nearly full-width panoramic glazing across the upper forward section, is positioned at approximately the same elevation as a second-floor apartment window. Not a campsite, not a car park, a vantage point. If the upper deck is divided into a forward lounge and a rear sleeping zone, you wake up at height, looking out through glass at whatever you parked next to the night before. Forest canopy, coastal cliff, desert horizon. The bed is positioned where you get the view. That is a design decision that comes directly from superyacht thinking, where the premium cabin is always the one with the best sight line, applied to a land vehicle. I have not seen this executed at this scale in a motorhome concept before. The living area. Natural light in the upper lounge will be exceptional. Full-width front glass, side windows, and given the roofline, the possibility of skylights running along the roof spine. In the morning, before you move the vehicle, before you do anything, that upper lounge will be flooded with directional light in a way that no conventional motorhome can match. You are not in a tube. You are in a glass room that happens to be on wheels. The sensory experience matters here. Soft surfaces. The renders hint at dark upholstery. Warm timber accents visible through the glass. Ambient lighting visible at the ceiling line. This is not trying to feel like a hotel room. It is trying to feel like a very considered home. There is a difference. Hotels feel transient. This feels like a space someone designed to live in for weeks at a time. Kitchen. The lower rear zone, based on the proportions available, likely supports a full residential kitchen configuration. Induction cooking, not gas. At this concept level, gas is an aesthetic compromise. Induction is cleaner, faster, and compatible with full electric systems. Counter surface area should be generous. This is a vehicle designed for people who actually cook, not people who heat things in a microwave. The storage bay access from the exterior suggests the pantry and equipment storage is substantial. Sleeping quarters. Upper rear. Away from the entry point, away from the cockpit. Private. Elevated. If there is a skylight above the sleeping zone, and the roofline geometry suggests there could be, you have the option of sleeping under glass. Star visibility. Dawnlight. This is the closest a land vehicle has ever come to replicating the experience of a premium safari tent or a luxury yacht cabin, where the boundary between inside and outside is intentional, not just structural. Bathroom. Lower level, almost certainly. The plumbing logic demands it. Walk-in shower feasibility at this vehicle width. The body appears to be approximately 8.5 to 9 feet wide, is entirely credible. You have enough lateral space for a proper shower enclosure without the contortionist compromises of conventional motorhome bathrooms. Gray water management at this size would require a substantial tank, probably 60 to 80 gallons, plus a separate black water system. For extended off-grid use, that gives you several days of comfortable operation. Cockpit. The cockpit sits behind that raked windshield we discussed outside. At this glass angle and width, the driver's eye level will receive exceptional forward and lateral visibility. Digital instrumentation is a given at this concept level. No analog gauges, no physical switches. A fully integrated digital dashboard, probably a curved single-panel display running the full width of the cockpit. Autonomous highway capability, Level 2 or Level 3, adaptive cruise with lane management, would be the logical technology pairing. You are not driving this vehicle through a city. You are managing it across long highway distances. That distinction matters for how the cockpit is designed. The smart climate system will learn. 2 weeks into ownership, it knows you want the upper lounge cooler in the morning and warmer in the evening. It knows the sleeping zone needs specific temperature management overnight. It knows the kitchen zone needs ventilation when the induction is running. It is not a thermostat. It is a system with memory. Let me be clear about something before we get into this. I am not going to invent fake specifications and pretend they are real. What I am going to do is tell you what the engineering reality would need to look like if someone were brave enough to actually build this. Propulsion. Full electric. At this positioning level, the design language, the finish quality, the concept ambition, diesel is not the answer. The luxury motorhome segment is moving toward electric just as the luxury car segment has already moved. The question is not whether, it is when. The TerraLuxe is imagining the when has already happened. In a real-world engineering scenario, a vehicle this size and weight would need a dual-motor configuration, one axle driven by each motor, with intelligent torque distribution between them. The real-world reference point here is the technology being developed for heavy electric coaches and long-haul electric trucks. Brands like Volvo and Daimler are already operating 500-plus horsepower electric drivetrains at this vehicle class. The technology exists. The application to a luxury motorhome is the next step. Battery. The honest range challenge is this. A vehicle this large, this heavy, with full climate control across 2 floors, will require substantial battery capacity. In a near-future production scenario, you are looking at somewhere between 300 and 500 kilowatt-hours of usable capacity to deliver 250 to 300 miles of real-world range. That is comparable to what serious electric coach operators are already deploying in Europe. It is not science fiction. It is 5 to 10 years of development away from being commercially viable at this size. Solar. That flat roof is not decorative. At this surface area, estimated at 150 to 200 square feet of usable roof panel space, you are looking at a solar yield that would comfortably sustain interior systems, climate, lighting, water heating, device charging. Not the traction battery, not the propulsion system, the interior. That distinction matters for off-grid use. Parked for 3 days in a remote location, the solar roof is what keeps the inside of this vehicle functioning as a home without drawing on your traction reserves. 6-wheel capability. The triaxle configuration does something interesting for off-road access. With 6 contact points and all-terrain tires, the ground pressure distribution allows this concept to traverse surfaces that would defeat a twin-axle motorhome of equivalent weight. Not rock crawling, but forest tracks, unpaved mountain roads, remote coastal routes, the places that people actually want to take a vehicle like this. Smart systems, predictive route planning, charging stop optimization, climate preconditioning, remote monitoring. Every system you would expect in a premium electric vehicle, scaled to a mobile home. The connected life, but untethered from any fixed address. All right, here is where I stop describing and start thinking. What it does genuinely well. The proportional discipline. I said it during the exterior walk, and I want to come back to it here because it is the single thing that elevates this above most double-deck concepts. The designer did not stack 2 levels and call it done. They thought about how those 2 levels read as a single visual object. The continuous roofline, the consistent glass framing, the color logic between upper and lower body. This is a resolved design. At concept level, that is rarer than it should be. What seems impractical? The height. Realistically, a vehicle at 13 to 14 feet total height faces serious infrastructure constraints. Parking structures, bridge clearances, campsite access roads, ferry loading decks. The list of places this cannot go without prior planning is long. That is not a fatal flaw for the concept's positioning. This is a vehicle for people who plan. But it is the honest limitation that a real-world version would need to solve, probably through a pneumatic suspension system that can drop the ride height by 8 to 12 inches when needed. Most impressive detail. The rear light treatment. I know that sounds like a small thing, but design coherence is built from small things that add up. The fact that the rear of this vehicle received the same intentional design energy as the front tells you something important about how this concept was developed. Most motorhome designs are front-forward. They put all the visual investment into the face and trail off at the rear. This one closes the loop. That rear light bar is the design detail I would point to in a critique as evidence of a designer who thought in 3 dimensions, not just elevation view. One thing I would change. The lower side glass. For a vehicle this intentional about the upper-level panoramic experience, the lower-level window proportions feel slightly conservative. I would push them larger, not to compromise the structural integrity of the body, but to bring the same sense of visual connection to the outside into the lower living zone. Right now, the upper level wins the light and the view. The lower level deserves a stronger argument. What it signals about luxury mobility. The double-deck motorhome concept keeps appearing. In China, in Europe, in concept renderings across the industry, because it is answering a question that real people are actually asking. Can a vehicle that moves be a home that feels permanent? Not a compromise. Not a hotel room on wheels. An actual home, with upstairs and downstairs, and a view worth waking up for. The TerraLuxe is one of the most considered answers to that question I have analyzed. It is a concept. It is fictional. It is AI-generated. And it is still one of the most resolved double-deck motorhome designs I have looked at. So here's what I want to know from you. If you could only choose one, panoramic upper deck lounge or the off-grid six-wheel capability, which one is the feature that actually makes you want to live in something like this? Drop it in the comments. I read all of them. If this is the kind of breakdown you come to YouTube for, no fluff, no filler, just serious design analysis on concepts that push at what's actually possible, then subscribing is the most efficient way to not miss the next one. We have some interesting things coming.